It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders, and it's a Friday, so we got DB joining us as well. What's going on, fellas?
Not much, man. It was a busy week. I felt like a lot to discuss, a lot of interesting storylines. The Steelers are 1-0, so I hope I don't jinx all the Steelers Nation coming back after missing last week after a win. I hope I don't jinx it this week, but interesting matchup for sure. Steelers-Broncos want to talk. Got some thoughts on that one as well.
Yeah, Derrick won't be back for week 3 if the Steelers don't take care of business. Alan, how are we feeling?
I'll be back for week 3 no matter what. So I'm okay. I
Job
think,
security.
I'm feeling all right. I mean, I don't know. It's Good Friday. Again, talked to Mike Tomlin today, and he was pretty funny. He said, "I'll tell you what's happening to quarterback. I'm not telling you nothing about tackle." So we got the quarterback information. But I mean, I think it's not much of a secret what's happening at tackle. And so I feel like yesterday was a good show, so let's have another one.
There we go. Well, let's discuss just that, Alan. Let's talk about the quarterback stuff, I guess, first and foremost. Russ officially listed as questionable, but Tomlin himself even said that's not really, pertinent to him starting this football game. So it's going to be Justin Fields starting a second straight football game against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been trending that way. I think it's pretty clear now, even though Russ is listed as questionable. I assume that he will again dress as the emergency backup. I don't think right now the question is like whether he could physically go out there and play. It's just how good is he going to be and what are the chances of him re-injuring it and making it worse, right? Like, I mean, he's out there at practice. He's moving around. It's not like he's incapable of playing. I just think they're worried that the injury would limit his effectiveness the way it is right now, and the potential of, again, re-injuring it, and these calf injuries turn into Achilles injuries at a very high rate. And that would be the end of his season and possibly the end of his career. So the Steelers don't want that, and Russ doesn't want that either.
Derek, do you have a take on that?
No, I mean, I think it's a smart decision. Really just like what Alan said, like, could he go out there and throw a football? Like, probably. Could he go out there and execute the full offense? Like, that's where I think the question kind of begins. Like, if he can't, I mean, we saw Kirk Cousins last week, right? Like, different injuries. Like, Kirk is coming back from a more serious one, but you have to be able to do certain things in order to like keep defenses honest. I mean, once the game got to the second half last week and the Steelers had picked up on the tendency that Atlanta was only aligning in the pistol, they were running the ball 82% of the time they were in the pistol. They ran no shotgun, no gun play action, anything like that. You saw TJ start to make a ton of plays from behind, like the pursuit. It just compromises the integrity of the offense. And, and then that's even before taking into account just like Russ's play style. Like, he's not a pocket passer. So he's a guy who you want to do some of the bootleg stuff with. You want to do some of the play action stuff, but also like a lot of his best plays oftentimes come on those second reaction plays with like, scrambles and getting first downs, throwing outside the pocket. And if he can't do those things, I think it's a relatively straightforward and easy decision, in my opinion, to keep going with Justin until that happens. And then we'll kind of address what needs to happen, I feel like, when that time comes.
And I think the conversation might be a little bit different if Justin had like turned the ball over a bunch or something like that.
Sure.
But he generally kind of like, it wasn't, it wasn't great. It wasn't like statistically dominant, but he kind of did like the base level stuff. Like, you remember, like the Steelers stuck with Mitch Trubisky until he threw, what was it, two interceptions and fumbled against the Colts. And then I was like, all right, you're done. You're out of here. Like, that's what's going to like, Justin Fields didn't do anything that's going to cause Mike Tomlin to make a drastic decision, which I think starting a far less than healthy Russell Wilson at this point would be.
Yep, agree.
Okay. Also, just a couple notes here, just based off the practice participation. I said Russ is questionable. Roman Wilson also listed as questionable, and then Patrick Queen, who popped up yesterday with a groin thing, which put some fear into me in terms of his availability into this game to pop up with that this late in the week. But it was just precautionary, so he's going to be able to go. What do we make about Roman Wilson? Do you think he's on the right side of questionable? And if so, to what degree do you think we would see him in this football game?
No, if he plays, I wouldn't expect to see him much, even if he does. I would say, the difference is that Fautanu was a guy who played. He was in that spot last week, right, where he got one full. And actually, Wilson didn't even get a full, but he got one full, and he still didn't play last week, coming off the injury. And he had 10 days of padded practices plus a preseason game that he participated in. And when he was doing that, he was like sort of on the verge of earning that starting role. Wilson didn't get any of that, training camp time, preseason time, and was on the second team to begin with anyway. So I don't think he's probably another week for me before you see him make an impact. He might dress. I kind of think that he will not. But we'll take their word for it and say it's 50-50. But even if he does dress, I don't think you're going to see much.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, for me personally, I would like to, and I think a lot of Steelers fans too would like to see him on the field and, see him dress, even if it's a really limited, because he didn't even practice fully all week. I mean, even if you were trying to get some designery type plays or a specific package or formation to get him in the game, even if it's just hey, we need you to play 5 snaps, we need you to run some deep overs and passing situations or off play action, and that can be your contribution for the week. The problem is, Roman's never played special teams. So that's the other part of this is right now he's probably wide receiver 4. I mean, maybe wide receiver 4. So if he's never covered kicks, never covered punts, a lot of time, I mean, that's not necessarily new. Some prospects come into the NFL having never done those things before. But the preseason and training camp is normally the time where you get to do those things. And he didn't have the chance. So it's kind of difficult. Now, I don't see that precluding him from getting a hat on game days moving forward. I just don't know, a less than full participation all week. I feel like it's going to be hard for him to get a helmet on Sunday. But even if they do, I think his impact will probably be pretty limited. I really think this will be a good, and we can talk about the Broncos matchup in general, but this is going to be, in my opinion, hopefully a more telling performance of what the receivers are going to bring to the table, not just as blockers, but really as receivers too, which could also give us an idea of what they're going to need from Roman Wilson, maybe next week and moving forward.
Yeah, him not being a special teamer, I don't think would be as big of a deal if they weren't using Scotty Miller and Ben Skoranek as gunners and Calvin Austin as a punt returner. I mean, you've got 3 special teams wide receivers dressed anyway. Feels like that's going to be hard to resolve. And Darius Rush, who would be the other gunner option, spent most of this week in the concussion protocol. Now they listed him as full this week, but there's out of concussion protocol, and also we want you running down covering kicks. I don't know. So if it's Miller and it's Skoranek, I don't see how Wilson can dress.
You might have just answered my question if those 2 are going to be the starting gunners, because I was going to ask if there was a chance that Brandon Johnson gets a helmet for this game or if we thought they'd stick with the same receiving group.
I don't see how they dress that many wide receivers. Maybe, but I mean, probably not.
I'm going to avoid getting on my soapbox here, but there needs to be some redistribution of labor among the receiver snaps on offense, in my opinion. If it's, I'm not saying it's going to happen this week. But like I said, this is kind of the put up or shut up type of week for me personally, for a couple of these guys, before I think you've got to take a really long, hard look about, like I said, the redistribution of labor among some of these guys.
Is one of those guys Van Jefferson, DB?
Yeah, I'm not trying to go off on the soapbox, man, but I think that common sense people can agree that wide receiver 2 is and is going to be an issue this year. We knew that. I mean, we've known that for a long time. But, with Jefferson, I've talked about it all off season, so I was blue in the face. This Matt Collins, Corey Davis role, the things that Art and the tight splits and just the scheme in general ask that position to do is it's a lot of work as a blocker. And Van Jefferson's he's just not physical enough. And that, it sucks to say that. I just don't see it. Like at the point of attack, I mean, there were 3 plays. I tweeted them out, and there's 3 plays just in the first 15 minutes of the Falcons game where like the guy he's assigned to block hit the ball carrier in the backfield, and it's like you can't, like, if you're gonna be a team that's going to be really run heavy on early downs, and you have to be super, super efficient in the run game anyway to keep your team on schedule. Like, you just can't have guys out there that are going to do that. And like, he's not a good enough receiver to warrant to where it's like, oh, well, like he's just a below average blocker. Like if he's a bad blocker and also like above his head right now in terms of like his receiving acumen,
doesn't play special teams,
like, what are we doing? I mean, I hate to be like that, but like, what is he bringing? Because I'm not saying it doesn't matter that he finished the game with like 1 catch for 1 yard. Like, yeah, I would like for him to be like more productive in that area, but like you have to be able to block in this system. Like, it's just not going to work. And like, that's the thing. Like for me, some of these guys that we're talking about maybe needing to get like more snaps or how they're going to fit him in, like a guy like Skoranek, who's at least, he may be a little bit of a downgrade from Jefferson as a receiver, but like I've seen this dude block like one-on-one. Like he's going to bring it every single play. He can hold up at the point of attack. He just brings a more physical brand of football. And then even like Roman Wilson, like I'm interested to see, like I know a lot of people are like, oh, Roman's going to have that spot. I mean, I think that the attitude, the effort is going to be there. But like Roman's also 5'10", 180s. But like I would be willing to give that a shot because I think Roman's going to be a better receiver than Van. But I'd be really willing to give that a shot if the effort and actual film is brutal once again, like this week. So it's really like and then that is before we can talk about the Broncos defense and just how they're going to play the Steelers. But this is a put up or shut up week, I think, for a couple people on the Steelers offense.
Yeah, I think the Steelers were like 54% run or something like that. Like, I think they were number 1 or number 2 in the league in run percentage.
And that's always how art is. Always.
If you're gonna be like that, like, and you're and Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson are gonna combine for 2 catches for 8 yards, play Ben Skoranek and Roman Wilson, even if they're not gonna throw him the ball, or just play more tight ends and fewer wide receivers. I know, like, you are inviting heavier defenders by doing that, but like, here's the thing. If you say, oh, we're an 11 personnel, so we're going to get light packages, but our wide receivers can't block their DBs, then it doesn't matter.
It doesn't help you.
I trust Van Jefferson and Michael Pruitt, or I trust Washington and Pruitt to block linebackers more than I trust Jefferson and Austin to block DBs. So bring in the extra linebackers. Who cares? Like, I think at some point you're not creating an advantage, even if the defense is lighter, by adding that personnel if they can't execute the way you want them to.
Yep, totally absolutely. Agree.
I want to dive into this matchup, but first, Alan, did anything come of? You mentioned the conversation you have today. I kind of always just like to go through that and see if anything noteworthy came through with that. But you talked to TJ today, Tomlin spoke today, Pat Queen, E-Rob, Dan Moore Jr. Anything from those conversations that you felt like was important to bring up?
Patrick Queen said he's fine, just a precautionary thing with his groin. Expects to be good to go. There's some video somewhere, I think up on the channel or maybe on my Twitter, of him, working on an interception drill. He looks fine. And always, like, I always feel good about the injury status of a veteran player when I walk into the locker room and they're sitting at their stool and they're not in the training room, because that's like some veteran players, and not that Pat Queen's like old or anything, but like you get to like, year 4, year 5, you spend a lot of time in that training room when you're fully healthy. So I thought that was a positive sign. Nothing else like really stands out to me about, interesting conversation with TJ just about the like film study that he does and about like what he was able to learn about timing up the Falcons snap opportunities and operation. And it's kind of like, I don't know what I have to do, but I'm not going to stop trying to get that advantage. But you can tell he's pretty frustrated by that penalty still. And also there was like this, apparently somebody, I don't know, I didn't see this clip, but somebody did because they asked him about it, where he like said hi to Kirk Cousins, like in the middle of the game.
Yeah, Kirk brought it up on Rich Eisen's show. I didn't see the actual clip. I saw Kirk talking about it.
Okay. So somebody asked him about it. And he's like, well, usually I don't talk trash to the quarterback after I hit them, but I will sometimes like say some stuff to make sure they know I'm close, like just to keep feeling me a little bit. Like if I didn't quite get home, and he's just about to release the ball, I might just make sure they know that I wasn't that far off either. I thought that was a pretty funny thing. And also just like the most Midwestern thing in the world for your trash talk to just be saying hi, right? Like, is that not like the most Wisconsin man of all time, where it's like, I scared him by saying hi just to let him know I was there? That's TJ Watt talking trash.
I love it. TJ to a T. All right, let's dive into this matchup a little bit. DB, I feel like the two matchups, if I were to let me guess here which matchups you're looking forward to the most. George Pickens versus Pat Surtain has to be up there.
Definitely.
How are you equally or somewhat close at least looking forward to the matchup between Courtland Sutton and Joey Porter Jr.?
That one's going to be a fun one too. I'm honestly like I was really impressed with just generally speaking, I thought the Broncos defense played pretty tough last week. I mean, one thing about the Broncos, they played man coverage on almost 70% of their snaps last week. I mean, Surtain is the guy that pretty much is going to follow the opposing team's best player, like wherever they go. I mean, he flips side to side. Like, there are very few players in the NFL at that position that probably carry or bear more responsibility than he does. Very unique skill set, can play at the line of scrimmage. He's great in press. He can also pedal, super patient, very, very technically sound. He's a bigger body guy, can tackle extremely well. He really has like no weaknesses. He has good long speed. Even like the matchup with him and DK Metcalf last week was it was very competitive. He had a couple of ticky-tack penalties, in my opinion. But, Metcalf got some catches on him underneath on a quick slant, and then he had a drag route underneath. But for the most part, I mean, there was no significant plays that he allowed. So we saw what Pickens did last week. I thought he thoroughly dominated that matchup between him and AJ Terrell. So I'm excited. I think Pickens, and I've said this on this podcast and pretty much every forum, but I think Pickens is like still yet. I don't even know that he's like super close to what he could potentially be. Like, I think that he's thoroughly in that like wide receiver one conversation, but I think we're just scratching the ceiling of like what he really can become. And I think that this is an excellent test because like we know, I would be surprised if the Broncos played 70% man coverage against this offense with Justin Fields back there, just because I don't think that they're going to want him to scramble, because they gave up a 35-yard scramble to Geno last week for a touchdown. I don't know if they're going to give those opportunities to Justin, because he's torched some teams when they've done that in the past. Like Detroit has felt that wrath from time to time. But this is a great matchup between two of my favorite players kind of to watch on film.
Yeah, if I was drawing this up for Denver's defense, I do not think, one, man coverage against Justin Fields is a good idea, and two, that man coverage against anyone other than George Pickens is particularly necessary. So, why are you manning up across the board against the rest of these Steelers wide receivers? I mean, you could play like some like cover two variants where you're just like manned up in one spot and everybody else is playing zone. Like, I don't know. I think that's probably what I'd be looking at. Or maybe quarters. I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot better ways to do it than what they did last week. So I'm really interested to see. I think that's one of the sort of like eternal coaching conundrums, right? There's like what you do well versus the best way to attack the opponent, and you kind of have to balance those two things. But I would certainly not be playing Justin Fields and this defense and a whole bunch of man. Although I will say the couple times that Atlanta went like zero or gave him like those kind of looks, I didn't think Fields did particularly well with them. I mean, he ran away from them sometimes, but like I don't think he threw against that kind of coverage particularly well. Of course, the Steelers don't get a lot of separation against that kind of coverage either. So, yeah, I think this game has sexy matchups on the outside, but will absolutely be won in the trenches. Like, I think like everyone is going to turn on this game wanting to watch Porter and Surtain and Pickens and Sutton. And the winner of this game will be who runs the ball and stays on schedule and doesn't have to use those big play wide receivers on the outside.
Yeah. And like, too, like just going back to like the man coverage thing, like Denver is a team, like, even if you go back to last year, like, was like top 5, I think, in terms of like blitz rate. So they're a team that wants to bring pressure. They don't have like I kind of like some of their collective pieces up front, but they don't have that TJ Watt style of like dominant 1A type pass rusher. They'd more have just like a lot of different guys that you can throw at the problem that are solid players, but they're not necessarily superstars. But like one of the ways that Seattle last week was really able to continuously move the ball, like once they got into a rhythm and stopped taking safeties, was like Tyler Lockett made a couple of like really big catches on Riley Moss. I actually thought Riley Moss played really well. I didn't really know what to expect from him. One of the like first white corner we've seen in ages, but he played. Yeah, and he played Lockett extremely well. Lockett had a big day statistically, but like some of those catches, man, like he had a couple big back shoulder catches. Like Moss was draped all over him. So like that's what I'm talking about too. Like beyond just like the blocking and the effort and the physicality aspect and the run game, I got to see like if that's how Denver want to play, and maybe it's not as much like 5-man or 6-man blitzes without a whole defender. Maybe it's maybe when they bring pressure, maybe they leave a spy in. Now again, like whoever Denver wants to spot Fields with, like they're not going to be as good of an athlete as he is. So that's whatever. But I'm interested to see like how they play the Steelers, especially, if the Steelers actually end up having to drop back and pass more than, they did against Atlanta.
I was going to say a matchup that sticks out to me, something that I wanted to bring up was this just feels like a Pat Freiermuth game to me. Didn't get to see a ton of him, obviously second on the team in targets with 4 last week. But going back to, and I know that I'm bringing up a fantasy football thing here, but I feel like you can relate to real life as well. Denver team with the most fantasy points last year to tight ends, not very good against them. And I don't know that there's been enough turnover for me to all of a sudden feel like they're drastically better at covering tight ends. I know we've talked about the matchup on the ground and stuff like that, but if there's going to be a guy in the Pittsburgh passing game that I would highlight, I think this could be a big week for Pat.
Yeah, I mean, we talked yesterday about Art Smith saying, well, we didn't attack the middle of the field because of how much respect we have for Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. There is no one in the middle of the field in this Denver defense to have a lot of respect for in terms of pass coverage. So absolutely, like Freiermuth, but also just like in general, like we saw a lot of George over the middle this training camp and preseason that we did not see last week. I think in general, like those kind of routes, I think we'll see a lot more Jaylen Warren as a receiver this week. Him now, beyond that hamstring injury. And so I think there's definitely an opportunity for them to do like a whole lot more in the passing game against this Denver defense that they really didn't show last week.
I'm actually really looking forward to seeing like the Steelers offensive line, though, like just sticking with like kind of the theme of throwing the ball. Like I said, the Broncos don't necessarily have great pieces up front, but they've got some pieces that can win some one-on-one matchups. John Cooper is a guy who big speed to power guy. So like Fautanu is kind of like what I think we're expecting at right tackle this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was one thing about Fautanu's college profile. I was a huge fan of him as a prospect. I'm excited to see him on the field. But one of the things that I kind of pushed back on, a lot of people was trying to push him inside the guard. Well, like maybe like his anchor is not like the strongest. Like that's really not where he wins as a player. So speed to power guys can sometimes like get him off balance. So I'm interested to see how he, goes up against Cooper. And then even on the other side, like Nick Benito was a dude that I loved as a prospect. He's a guy like super, super bendy, can really get off the rock. And Zach Allen, like we saw the Steelers do pretty much everything in their power to avoid like leaving like Spencer Anderson in one-on-one situations against Grady Jarrett last week. Zach Allen, like not the same probably caliber of player, but very good with his footwork and set up his moves, like really quick twitch athlete, likes to get up the field, but you can run the ball at him. So like that's the other thing is like they're probably going to target him in the run game, try to run in his direction and get him on some double teams.
How do we feel about the matchup with Denver's offensive line versus the Steelers' defensive line?
Should be a bloodbath.
It's going to be the same answer for every team you ask that question about the entirety of the 2020.
But there's also some injury concern there. We talked about the left tackle, Garrett Bowles. If he does play in this game, clearly he's not going to be 100%. That's why, on the offensive side, I feel like it's a big week for Pat. On the defensive side, I feel like Alex Highsmith is due for a big day.
It's a race to the quarterback. And the quarterback is going to probably do better to take a bunch of sacks than just start throwing the ball because, I talked a lot about Nix in the morning rush this morning, so I don't need to reiterate those concerns, but let's just say he threw some balls in some bad places last week, and Steelers scored 9 points off turnovers, and they won that game by 8. And so I think that is a key here, is that they have to get the ball out, and I expect they will.
Yeah.
DBs was super high on Bo Nix. I think he was like right there with Caleb Williams for him in this class.
Yeah.
Wait, which of us likes him less? I'm not sure. Where would you have drafted Bo Nix in this draft? Where would you have put, like, somebody draft him at what slot would you have said, okay, that's fine, that makes sense?
I mean, the quarterback tax, even if you like understand that people are going to reach on quarterbacks, I mean, I have like I have positional value like pretty much equated into my grading scale, and he was still, I think he was the 50th ranked prospect on my big board. Denver took him, I think, at 11. Is that right? 11 or 12? So
12.
I don't think I would have taken him even in the second round.
Yeah, I mean,
I still, I think he's.
I do like he's a lot better of a player than we saw last week. I think like the necessary context is like most rookie quarterbacks are bad. First games, you could tell like he was very surprised by the speed of the Seahawks secondary. I mean, and the Seahawks got some fast players. That interception that Woolen made defending that crosser all the way across the field was one of the more spectacular plays that I've seen in a long time from a corner. But having said that, like drifting into pressure, I mean, he was under pressure on 22 of his dropbacks. Why Sean Payton? I think that we could probably point the microscope a little bit at Sean Payton for dropping back a rookie quarterback in week 1 against the Mike McDonald defense 50 times. I think that's bad coaching. But like even having said that, like 44% pressure rate is absurd. Like the Steelers are going to have the matchups on the offensive line. And also I thought Nix kind of brought some of that pressure on himself by drifting to pressure in the pocket, and then just some of the uncharacteristic mistakes. I mean, if you looked at like Bo Nix at Auburn, like that's kind of how he looked like last Sunday, which was the version that like pretty much no one liked. And then he went to Oregon. He got surrounded by better coaching and a better supporting cast, and he just looked like a more sophisticated quarterback. But Nix does do some things really well. Like he typically will get the ball out on time. He is really accurate in the underneath areas of the game. He can throw the deep ball a little bit too. I thought he really struggled in the intermediate area though against the Seahawks. Like accuracy was just all over the place. I think the decision making will probably be better, and it's at home, so I guess that'll probably calm him down a little bit too. But I don't know, man. This Steelers defense got so much talent up front that I think they're going to make life hell for him. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that the Broncos are only the Steelers are only 2.5 point favorites, and that's saying that on the road.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and this is not like some sort of like otherworldly group of playmakers either, where he can just dink and dunk, and those guys can go run. And like Sutton's good, but there's not like a ton else there that you're really afraid of, like, you know, guys running around and, you know, after collecting some underneath stuff. I don't know. I think if I was Sean Payton, I'd be trying to run the ball 40 times, but he does not seem to prefer that tact. So I agree with your first statement that this is probably going to be ugly.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't run the ball particularly well against the Seahawks either. You know, Peyton does do some creative things in the run game in terms of like creating good angles for his guys. You know, they don't use a ton of motion, but they will use it a little bit more in the run game. I think that they're going to try to set him up for more success than they did last week, or at least like for his sake. I hope they do. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of doing a similar thing that some people were also doing with the Steelers this year, but I just trust Mike Tomlin more than I trust Sean Payton. But like a lot of people are saying like, oh, like the Broncos are going to go over their over-under just because like they've got Sean Payton. Like look at what he did last year. He turned them into like a decent team, and that was with Russell Wilson and having to bench him and all the stuff going on there. I don't know, man. I just don't think they're that talented. Like, I think their defense is probably a little bit better than a lot of people expect, and I think their offense is worse. Like, I just don't see the playmakers. They've got some decent pieces. Like, even a guy like, I like Josh Reynolds probably more than most. I think he's a perfectly fine wide receiver 3, but, like, I thought he was like one of their best players last week on offense. And like, if that's the case, man, like that's not a good spot to be in. I don't know. I don't know what to say. If you can't run the ball a lot and you're asking your quarterback, like a rookie quarterback, to drop back and pass 50 times, and I have some reservations about his game and how it's going to translate to this level, I don't know. I think the Steelers defense should eat. I really do.
I believe that as well.
I mean, like a third of their salary cap is going to be on Pittsburgh's sideline. So, like that's probably why they aren't very good. If anybody ever wonders, wants to think that the salary cap isn't real, just watch the Denver Broncos this season. The idea that they're going to go over their over-under, I think they're much more likely to draft number 1 overall than to go over their total.
What is their total?
Doesn't matter. I'm taking the under.
I was saying, what is it, like 4.5? Or
there is no number that maybe
it was higher than that. I think
I think it was like 5.5.
I want to say it was like 5.5 or 6.5.
Yeah.
Well, if it was 6.5, my goodness. But all right. All right. So what I want to do now, predictions, obviously for the game, but I also want, like, I don't know if I'm going to say bold, but one thing that you think is going to happen in this game, whether it's a specific player getting a turnover or something like that, something along those lines.
I'll go. Okay, DB, go for it.
Well, it looked like he was already. Alan, if you have yours already, that's great. But it looked like
go ahead, go ahead, Alan, because I'm gonna have something.
I'm gonna say Steelers 27, Broncos 9, and my specific
27?
prediction 27-9.
If they score 27, I might levitate.
My specific prediction is that Justin Fields will be responsible for all 3 of those touchdowns, whether they're him running or him throwing.
Okay, so all y'all people.
By the way, he threw for 335 and 4 touchdowns against the Broncos last year. Probably the best game of his career.
So all you people in the comments that are always complaining that Alan doesn't like Justin Fields, there you go. He's giving you what you want. He's saying Justin's going to have a great day. Calm down. My prediction is that the Steelers will win. They will probably not win by as many points as I would like them to win, given that I think that they are a better team, a noticeably better team. I don't necessarily – I'm taking the Steelers are going to win by more than 2.5, if that's what you're asking me. I want the Steelers in this game if I was a betting man, which I may turn back into. We'll see. I don't know. One of these days. But I think my bold prediction is, the Steelers really – didn't have a ton of explosive plays last week. They had the one called back to Pickens. They got the 2 other passes to Pickens, but they only had really one true explosive run, and it was the toss to Harris. My bold prediction is that they will have multiple explosive runs of more than 15 yards, and I think that Fields breaks a long touchdown of longer than 25. That's my prediction.
Okay, I'm going with the Steelers 26, Broncos, and this is kind of wild because I think the Atlanta Falcons by the end of the year are going to be a much better team, much better offense than the Broncos, but I think the Broncos score more points. We're going 26-13. The Steelers win this one. My prediction, it's a day of the Pats. Freiermuth scores 2 touchdowns. Patrick Queen, who there's a lot of talk about, gets his first turnover as a Pittsburgh Steeler. There was no splash plays really last week, and people were making a lot about it. I think he gets one this week.
I could see that. I love it.
There we go. Let us know what you guys think in the comments, what your predictions are, not only for the game, but also if you have a bold prediction, we'd love to see those in the comments as well.
I also have one more. I have one more. Another not so bold prediction is that Derrick will probably be on Twitter around Monday around noon complaining about the wide receiver blocking. But I digress. You guys in the comments can put the over under on that, but I'm going to say noon about Monday that I'll be complaining about that.
Obviously, Pat Surtain, he can do everything. How is Riley Moss? Because we know we're not going to see Levi Wallace. We're going to see Riley Moss at CB2 again. What's his run blocking or not run blocking? Run game.
Before we get there was a bunch of stories written today, but the Broncos are learning about the Steelers from Levi Wallace. I'm like, the Steelers have their starting quarterback from last year on their. How could Levi Wallace possibly be? I mean, this is not any disrespect to Levi Wallace. I think he's an underrated player and always has been. But what could Levi Wallace possibly bring to the table that would even be remotely comparable for having the guy that was the starting quarterback for the last 2 years? What are we doing?
I'm just going to go ahead and say it, man. I'm not saying that it's easy going up because the Steelers have been a really good defensive team for a long time. But there ain't a ton of bells and whistles to what they're doing out there, man. They played cover 3 on like 58% of their dropbacks last week. They're gonna play single high. They're gonna blitz Bo more than they did with Kirk Cousins. I can guarantee you that. I mean, some of the stuff. I mean, it's not a very exotic defense. So whatever they're gonna learn.
Base defense was installed in 1982. 1982. They've been playing the same base defense since then.
Yeah,
well, there's no secrets left.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is also the same. Like, I mean, we got some new faces that we're seeing in the Berg these days, like Patrick Queen, Dante Jackson, but the foundational like pillars of the defense are also like the same. So I don't know, man. We'll see what it is. I'm excited. I think this could be one of the most exciting games that we've seen in a while, or it could just be one that we're frustrated. It's like, oh yeah, the Steelers won, but you don't feel great about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel great about any win, to be honest with you, nowadays. So just take care of business and move to the next one. DB, you know the drill when you're on here. Tell the people they can find you.
At Steelers_DB on Twitter/X and YouTube. And then you can follow all of my written work on SteelersNow.com. Wrote a piece on the offensive line, just contextualizing their performance against the Falcons. And then I'll have something up early Saturday morning, not just a Steelers preview on my YouTube channel, but I'm also going to be writing something on Bo Nix and the offense, and just some of the beyond even some of the things we talked about today, but just some things that I think are pertinent that you'll want to pay attention to as the matchup unfolds on Sunday.
There we go. Love it. And Alan?
Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now. It's the site's account. SteelersNow.com. Southside Scoop will be up, I believe, tomorrow morning. I'm nearly 100% on that. Nearly 100% on that tomorrow morning. And then you'll see me at what is the name of the stadium now? It's had like 9 of them. I don't really remember. But Mile High? We're just calling it.
I was saying, I think
High.
It's called Mile High.
No, it has.
Or is it one of those weird ones that's like something field at
something field at Mile High, and it's been like 9 different names in 5 years, and I can't be bothered to keep track. So I'll have to learn it.
I think it's called Russell Wilson Field at Mile High Stadium because of how much they paid him.
He could afford it, given how much they paid him. He absolutely could afford it. I'll be there on Sunday.
Absolutely. There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments, like I said, with your predictions for the game, how you're feeling, anything that we talked about today, your thoughts or a question for a future episode. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find us there, and also find us on TikTok at Steelers Afternoon Drive, and then catch me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell, and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.